Today, we continue our Plaque on the Wall series about this incredible bridge that we have created connecting ourselves to one another, to the faith traditions that raised us, and to the universal altruism that connects us all. From what I understand, when this concept was brought up, the artists in the fellowship gathered and listed what faith traditions were represented in the fellowship, and they split up the assignments. Maryellen Bartlett took up the cross, so to speak. And what a brave soul she was. Maryellen died in 2009. She was a charter member of our fellowship, and she was an art teacher. On our material, there's some copies of it in the foyer. It's called a Catholic cross, and it's this one here. And I think because it is called a Catholic cross, I feel inspired to confess something to you. And some of you already know what that is. Since the day we came here, I have lovingly called this the earmuff cross because it looks like it has on earmuffs to me. It looks like it's cold. And I want you to know that I have sincerely searched high and low for this specific symbolism around the rest of this image and this cross. And it has not been easy. I have come to believe, after some research and reaching out to some more liturgical ministers, that the symbolism on this plaque is meant to mirror medieval architecture. There's a recurrent theme in cathedrals from this era that includes this round pattern in stained glass. And this is what I believe Maryellen was going for here. It is not much easier to learn the history of the cross as a symbol of Christianity either. It would seem like it was. Some say it predates Christianity as a religious symbol. Perhaps it was appropriated from a symbol for a pagan god of fertility. The first time a cross was used as a Christian symbol was the Cairo cross that you've probably seen before with the P and the X put together. It was also known maybe as a chrismon at the time. It was used in the time of Constantine after his vision that led him to make Christianity legal. And mostly, after that, stopped the practice of crucifying people as a means of execution. Maybe we shouldn't have the thing as our faith as the way that they kill us. I don't know. Other symbols of the cross were the capital T, or the Tau cross, and the standard lowercase t we are used to. I think that most Christians would tell you that the cross represents Christ's resurrection. St.Francis had his own experience with a cross, actually. Well, a crucifix, to be exact. After being born a rich and sheltered kid, indulgent, Francis had always felt like something was missing. So he goes on a pilgrimage where a crucifix spoke to him in the ruins of the church of San Damiano. Christ, through the crucifix, told Francis to rebuild the church. And so, Francis, the spoiled kid that he is, goes back to his father's business, steals 2 bolts of fabric because he was a silk merchant, sells them and his horse, and he takes all of the money that he had taken back to the priest serving in these ruins, who was terrified of his father and refused the money. Francis's father then calls him before the bishop, who encouraged him to return the money to his father, and so, being a little dramatic, Francis strips off all of his clothes and the money and gives them over to his father, right there in front of the entire assembly. I promise not to get naked today. He disowned his father that day, and he gave away everything he owned, and he became a beggar. Anything he got from begging, he contributed to rebuilding church buildings, including just begging for stone, literally just walking around saying, do you have extra stone, whatever, and then he would use that stone to rebuild the churches. In the eyes of the church and society of the day, he was not a person of power. He never went to any of the homily trainings that a lot of the priests had done in the day. He was an itinerant preacher, is what we probably would have called him. And it said that when he preached, birds would gather around him. He deeply believed that all creation was important and worthy of care. He was radical for his day. Dramatic. When he started his ministry in front of the bishop from that day, being dramatic. His sermons were personal and he was fiery. He cried and he sung and he danced. I mean, in the scheme of things, I think you guys might be getting the short end of the stick here with me. In perhaps one of the most familiar stories about him, he saw a large group of birds in a valley. And he was so excited to see them that he ran towards them. And when they didn't fly away, he walked amongst their flock and he patted their heads and he spoke to them. And then he began to preach to them. Now, I do talk to my animals. If you were here yesterday, you learned just how many I have. So I do talk to them. But preaching to them, that's another level of believing in our connectedness. Francis called for respect and stewardship for all of creation. And despite being a bit of a fire and brimstone type speaker of his day, he did understand something that I think largely gets left out of faith today. And that's that it cannot only focus on what happens after we die. When we do that, there's nothing invested in making living better for those around us. I imagine if he were alive today, he would be on the front lines of climate action, advocating for change in earth care. He was the embodiment of interdependency. Unfortunately, the Christian cross has said other things to people throughout history. Although maybe not as directly as the crucifix spoke to Francis, it has spoken throughout history. For many, it has always been a symbol of a threat because it has been a symbol of power. A threat before Christianity was legal, used on weaponry during the Crusades, and even today weaponized in churches all over the world where people are shamed and blamed and told they are wretched and sinful. Really, in a way, it's still a symbol of torture and bondage. And while I can certainly see the value and hope in taking a symbol of that which was meant to destroy you and reframing it as a symbol of what you can overcome, still, I'm afraid that even that drastically misses the point and the truth of what we can learn from both Francis and from Jesus. There's another set of symbolism, one that I think can honor who we are as Unitarian Universalists. Even those of us who may not identify as Christian. Perhaps we can see the vertical line of the cross as symbolizing something that connects us to all that is greater than ourselves. Be that God or spirit or carbon or altruism or love. And then the horizontal line of the cross as representing our connection to one another. Our connection to all of nature, to our dependence upon one another. In that way, may the responsibility of the cross be one that calls us to care for one another and to dedicate ourselves to the greater good. May it be so.